Hi everyone, welcome to a Wolfram Language Design Review, an early one in our cycle for the next version of Wolfram Language. This is about DiffTools, how you tell if things in a notebook or other type of thing is different. So let's take a look. So where are we starting here?
Yeah. So, by the way, the examples in here work, but just the names are different just because it was what we had to do to get the notebook running. So it's
Yeah, I
just not in the
understand.
system yet.
So let's just take a look at the most basic thing. Okay. Wow. Huh. Huh.
Wow, this has
So,
advanced significantly since the last time I looked at this.
yeah, this is cool.
So
Okay.
as we discussed before, some of the ones toward the bottom of that list are maybe a bit more on the cutesy side, but still potential interest.
Well, so
probably the
long as they
top.
work, I don't have an objection.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do we want to start this review?
Okay, so I have 4 functions that I'm proposing, and then some options too. But I haven't written up documentation for the options. But the functions, I mean, we can start right here with diff, and just to as a prelude, I'll just say the other ones are diff3, which is the 3-way version of diff, diff apply, which is how you take a diff in an object and get a transformed thing, and then diff object, which is the thing that diff and diff3 return.
That's this thing here.
Yes, that is a diff object.
Okay. How much what does the one mean there?
It's an
That's just
internal
version.
versioning. Yeah. In case we radically change
No,
the
no, I
structure of
agree.
diff
I think
object.
it's a good thing to do. I was exactly going to ask about that. But we don't expect diff object to be opened by end users, so to speak.
No, in fact, diff object has, it has down values, and it has the goal is for there to be enough down values to get any information you want from the down values, and not from exploring the guts of diff object.
Okay. Boy, this is a pretty complicated system.
It's not simple.
Okay.
That's part of why it's taken so long to get this together.
I know. Okay, diff3.
Correct. And then diff apply was the other one. But diff3 and diff are, they're pretty close to one another. So
they do have to be separate functions.
Yes.
And there's no diff4.
Well, I think that's a fair question. And generally the industry has a notion of 3-way diffs, and not really a very standardized notion of multi-way diffs. That doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't do it, but we haven't done it.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's take a look at let's go through these. Okay, what's the other one? Diff apply.
Diff apply, yeah.
All right. Let's start off then with what these apply to, so to speak. So
sure.
We've got lists, associations. That's futurized. How come?
It just hasn't been done yet. It's just extra.
Is it obvious what?
Well, associations is kind of like a special case of lists. But we might want to kind of tweak things a little bit. Maybe like if the keys are the same but the values are different, we might want to present that in a slightly different way, for example.
Yes. Okay. Are there any other things that we have considered diffing?
Well, we certainly consider diffing expressions generally, but that is, you know, that's another mountaintop.
Yeah.
So,
And when it comes to diffs with like finite precision numbers, is there a same test story?
at this point, no. I mean, there is a certain amount of, so we do have, you know, this ability to have, there's a diff input function, which one could imagine, you know, does some sort of standardization of something like that. And we are still finding you know, interesting sorts of cases like that. I mean, one thing which Lou and I were looking at last week, you know, I discovered and Lou diagnosed was this issue of notebook diffing and whether the thing in the notebook is in the form compressed data or not. Which like is, you know, it's the same in terms of how the notebook is read, but it's representationally different.
Yeah. And UUIDs and things you're obviously ignoring.
UUIDs, we are,
Depends.
yeah,
The-
UUIDs we are using for the align cell list option. So you know, sometimes it's a really good thing to have UUIDs because you can figure
Yeah.
out what the user actually changed as opposed to heuristically trying to figure out what the user changed.
Yep. Yep.
So, but that's a thing that's under the control of the align cell list option.
Okay. All right. So let's take a look at some of these. So a biosequence. So do we have some samples here? Do we have examples down here?
I don't remember if there's a biosequence example. Lou, do you have something?
I could
Great.
pull up my mitochondrion. Or is that too?
No. There is a biosequence example. Let me just find it. Shoot.
Yeah, sorry. This is the
And
one
that
that
should
was.
work, by the way. That should work. That's a bug in Wolfram Alpha parsing.
Hmm. I mean, sorry, I've played with examples of this myself, but then I didn't keep them.
Oh Christ! Why
So
doesn't this work? I mean, oh gosh, do I have to do this? Is this what I have to do? Well, that's a mitochondrion. Okay. Do you want me to pull up mine? I could pull up mine.
Just give me half a second and I'll send you an example. I just
Well,
need-
this is interesting because it's quite long. That's the point. Let's see. Oh, let's just see. Maybe I can pull up somebody else's. On the grounds that
they're public domain people.
Mhm.
yeah.
Or they're sufficiently anonymized people.
Who knows? Somebody could target. If anybody cared, they could. Let's see, where is it?
Sequence some Stephen mitochondria and plant them at a crime scene.
Yeah, for example, or target some weird thing up. What's this? Yeah, okay, but these are toy examples. I want to try a more real example. I want to try an example that is a more serious, longer. Yeah, well, that's lovely, but I want to see what it looks like for something much longer. Can somebody find me? There's got to be some mitochondrial sequences online. I'm looking at NCBI, and it has some. It's in a slightly different format, so just a faster file with a mitochondrion is what I need, because then I can read it in.
What kind of file?
FASTA, FASTA.
Oh, FASTA. Okay. Sorry, not in my central wheelhouse. So.
Ah, here we go. Well, let's see how this works. This is a mouse. Squeak, squeak. I have no clue how similar that is to the human one. And presumably we have to remove.
So one of the things we haven't looked deeply into yet is performance. Danny Lichtblau is actually working on improvements to sequence alignment that might help with performance.
Okay.
It should help. I mean, his tests show that a interesting speed up. But those
Yeah.
changes are not yet.
Okay, well, let's
in
just do
this
this. So
package.
let's
Yep.
say diff. Now, if I just say human, mouse.
Now this actually will, I think it will just be a standard string character-wise diff. But
Yeah.
that's effectively what a biosequence diff though is. It's
Okay.
really just taking the string data out.
Okay, so now what does this mean?
Well, so the red is, I'm sorry, I forgot which one was first and which one was second.
I think, I forget which one was first. Yeah.
Right, but
think
the reds are the
now
things you're
human.
taking out from the human.
Yeah, and then the green is added from the mouse.
Okay, that's not terrible. Now what can I do? So if I say something else here, what does character alignment mean?
That might be
That gives a more
Just-
standard bio letter by letter conjoining.
It's a bit slow.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot here.
Yeah, I understand, but the mitochondrion is actually quite small compared to many things. I see. Graphic design wise, that stem there probably should be, I mean, if we're going to have most of the characters be black, that stem should be gray or something, shouldn't it?
Makes sense.
Might it help to increase the line spacing as well between the sort of the joined?
Yeah, you're right. Well, or have the stems be shorter. I don't think the stems need to be as long as they are here.
That's a good point.
right, but I think it would. I don't think that addresses what Noah was pointing out, that the grouping is a little unobvious, and so having more.
I think if those stems are shorter, I think it would look fine. I think you're using characters for those stems, right? And I think that just needs to be, they just need to be tightened up a bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, there is actually, you can tell there is a bit of line spacing that's there. It's just not enough compared to what's going on around it.
Oh, look at that. That's nice. It correctly does that.
Yeah.
So why is there such a big, why is there so much space on the right and not on the left here?
Oh, because we should be fixing line spacing. That's, yeah.
Line
That's
spacing
Jason.
or line?
Or sorry,
That's-
not line spacing, line
Line
indexing.
breaking.
Line breaking. Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's all Jason's fault. We'll just go with that.
Okay, but I mean, this is a bug, right? We're not the
Yeah, it's
Bug is okay.
it's. I mean, once identified, it's a very simple thing for Lua to fix. So yeah,
okay. What's character
And-
should I try?
probably the same thing happens with any string diff.
What the hell is that?
So this is giving a peek into the raw data from the diff object
But why isn't there a more button or something here?
because it's minimal. This could be a browser, but it's currently not. Details will give you the full story if you really want it.
Okay.
Maybe consider minimal the equivalent of short on the details.
Right. But so now this format where it's position arrow what's happening. But I don't understand this. What does that mean?
That means there's something in the first list and nothing in the second list or string. Sorry.
No, I understand.
Notice,
but-
notice, for example, 2 down, which is considered an edit, where a thing has actually changed from one
But
to the
that's
next.
position 808 in string 1 and 370 in string 2. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So but that format of position arrow value, is that used anywhere else?
Not arrow, but the idea of a position is yes. I mean, that is the
That's
fundamental format
yeah, that's
of textual diffs.
Yeah, I mean that goes all the way back to, you know, the original command, you know, Unix diff. And
Yeah,
I don't know if things predate that, but
RCS or something probably predates that, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, be that as it may. Okay. So here's a question. Sequence alignment has this thing which I found quite nice, which is string, thing, and then comma, list, case 1, case 2. Do we have a format here that looks like that?
We
I don't-
don't.
I don't think so.
right.
We
I
should-
mean
we should be
right,
able
the
to expect
unified
that.
is the unified is sort of that, right? Only instead of list 1, list 2, we have red and green.
Yeah, I understand. But what I'm saying is I find it programmatically useful. Like if I do, you know, if I do wherever, if I do this, if I say sequence alignment, what I'm going to get is
Right.
something probably the same data, but see this? I like this format. I mean,
Right. That's which is fine in this case, but it is ambiguous if dealing with general expressions. Right. This is fine because of, you know, strings have exactly one dimension and are linear.
Fair point. So, but to me, this is a sub-value that should exist for diff object. But if
Okay,
you know what you're doing, you could get this. You should be able to get this.
sure. Yes, that would be a trivial. Yes, I could add a property that gives you
Okay,
this.
all right,
with
okay.
Zero effort.
Okay, all right, okay. Let's keep going then. So I think I'm sort of understanding what's going on here. So I better look at a notebook diff. Where do I have some samples of that?
So we don't have samples. I'm not sure if there are any examples in here, but Lou has some.
There
if
should be
needed.
one on that page, John. Unless you removed it.
No, I didn't even touch the examples. To be honest, when I was
Okay,
reviewing,
scroll down a bit
wasn't
more.
focused on the
to
examples.
Okay, by the way, these things like diff granularity shouldn't be a string. Go ahead. What were you saying here?
Right. Scroll down a bit more, please.
And to answer your question, or to answer that, yes, we know it's you know it'll all get fixed up once we have some blessings on some names.
Okay.
Right. So that last example just above generalization and extensions. I mean, it's a pretty trivial notebook, but
Oh, I completely don't understand this
Well-
output. I mean, I would have expected to see some graphical representation.
So click the view as.
Okay, copy it over to my. I can copy this as a self-contained, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Report.
And then choose like report, for example.
Well, that's a bit indecorous there.
Can you be more verbose?
Well, I mean, it's just got frigging less than signs. I mean,
Okay, so just the notebook expression is what you were.
yeah, I'm complaining about
okay.
the formatting here. The formatting could be nicer here. Okay, but how do I see this? Okay, what will people expect to see? Look, for goodness sake, we need an actual notebook that we can diff here.
Right. And I just sent you an input that there are a couple of actual notebooks in the Packlet,
Okay.
and that input will summon them and diff them. And this is taken from edits to the dynamic tutorial, I believe, that Teo made along the way.
Okay, what do I do here? Okay,
Go
this
to-
is obviously horrendous.
It is the details.
But,
If you didn't want the
it
details,
it is what you would
Yeah.
expect from details. Yeah.
oh, that cell bracket should not be remaining lit.
Well, it's dynamic. What can it say?
Well,
Right.
I think that's a bug that might already be
Why on
fixed.
earth is that so big, that font? Okay, so these blue
So,
mean what?
Right,
Well-
right, because this notebook doesn't have all the documentation styles, right? So
yeah, so this is one. There is a problem of embedding a notebook inside of another notebook. Is that we don't have a way to kind of change style sheets on the inner notebook. So, when displaying it as we are here, that's that's something that's just going to be missing.
and of course that's not even raising the question of what if the before and after have different style definitions.
Yes. Okay,
Right,
but
in
what
this
does
view-
this mean? What does blue mean?
Okay, blue is an edit. It means there was a change from the left to the right hand side.
So
It'd be
so
nice
the
if we
diff
could see more explicitly what that was.
Yes, that is hard.
But why can't you just run a textual diff on what's in the
Yes.
inside?
that's in the plan. Yes.
Okay,
Just haven't gotten there yet.
okay.
For
fine.
text, that's doable. Yes.
Yeah,
For graphics, that's a different.
hopeless.
Well, and in this case,
even,
by the
and
way,
even for a general box data cell, right?
yeah,
That's hopeless.
in
Yeah,
this,
that's the expression diff problem, which we haven't
in
solved.
this case, it's somewhere between easy and hopeless, because notice there are embedded hyperlinks and box expressions.
I know,
in
but
that
I
cell.
think you
Yeah.
can just literally compare them, and if they're different, they're different. Consider them like word granularity things.
Yeah.
I mean, similarly here, I would have thought you could consider having a top level, just plain list, do a same or different, expression, same queue type thing for the elements. You could map that down one level in the list.
Well, there's the expression that the cell represents, and there's the expression that the cell is actually made of. The box expression that it's
I
actually made of.
understand. Yeah, I don't know what to do with that. Okay, so
And if you open the report notebook for this, you can actually dig into. So notice the openers on the left there, right? So this will show you a side-by-side rendering that does make some attempt to highlight the strings that have changed,
all right,
in
so
addition to the
yeah.
options.
Okay, let's talk about this. Where was the other one I had? I had another diff thing from that. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so I think details should be at the bottom.
That's fine.
Possibly even under a delimiter.
Well, I don't know whether it's worthwhile to have what does an array plot do?
So I wanted a way to sort of iconographically indicate, the extent, the presence and extent of changes. And this example for alignment chart isn't so interesting, but there are others that are interesting. Notice that in the report notebooks, I use this array plot to give an indication, a visual indication of the extent of the diffs.
Where's the array plot here? Where is it?
It could be. Not every diff, not every diff supports every format,
I understand, but I don't see why this couldn't
but
have a array
it
plot.
could,
Seems
this
useful.
could have a array plot. Yes, I agree.
And alignment chart.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I've got complaints to make about the what we're putting in these report notebooks, but they're largely cosmetic complaints. Okay, so let's have a little look at a little bit more of the content before we get into that. Okay, diff granularity, yeah, that's intended to be a symbol.
So,
right?
let me call out one thing which I've before we get to the options. Let me call out one thing which isn't quite implemented yet. At least I don't think it is, but was something I was suggesting, was the the use of kind of the equivalence of, either, an expression, an object, or a file expression, which points to a file of that type. So, that you could diff, any combination of a notebook expression, a notebook object, or a file of a .mb file.
I get
And
it.
that does
Very
work
nice.
now. Yeah, that does work now.
That's
Good.
nice.
What
And
doesn't yet work is diffing a string expression against a file, for instance,
I
a
see.
file containing a string.
Right, but
And-
what I like about the thing you just said is that means I can diff an open notebook which hasn't been saved against one that's saved on disk.
That is exactly
Absolutely.
true. Yes.
That's going to be an important feature, I think. I think we'll want a menu item specifically to say, what have I done to this notebook since the last time I saved it?
Yeah, that's a great feature to have. Okay. So just so I understand, plugging this into Git, what's involved in doing that?
So, it depends a bit on, whether you want to run it from, have command line Git, do this sort of thing through like a Wolfram script type interface, which I think is what we really want to do, but we're not there yet. Or whether you want to flip it the other way around, which you will in some cases, and be able to do something from within the notebook interface. And the the ideal thing that you want to do is you have a notebook that's in Git. You open that notebook, you make some changes, and then you say, show me the changes I just made, or show me the history of this file and the changes between two particular revisions in the history. We're not there yet. It's just, I'm not concerned about doing it, but it's just work. It's just work that needs to be done.
Right. That's thing one. Thing two is rebasing workflows in Git. Notebook files with all the metadata changes don't behave well for textual rebasing. And I very much want to have a rebase that is aware of the notebook file format and can do, can get all the conflicts that aren't really conflicts out of the way.
Yes.
Now, some of this stuff that we're talking about, not all of it, but some of it is going to require Git link. And well, as you know, Git link is, we have a thing that works, that's good, but we haven't really, the design hasn't been pounded upon. It's certainly not available in the system context. So there are questions about how we want to proceed with that. We've not tried to resolve those questions for this release.
Right. Okay. So because all the GUI-ness here is obviously not so relevant to
well, Git has the ability to so Git has a way that you can plug something in called a diff tool, or there's another thing called a merge tool, which is the same idea but just for merges. And the thing that you plug in can be a GUI. In fact, it often is. People often use GUI diff programs as diff tools. So what's, but the diff tool is, there's a bit of nuance around that though, because the diff tool wants to own all of the diff transactions, whereas we really kind of like to just own the notebook and Wolfram language oriented diff transactions. So that's,
I get it.
Yeah, so we're looking at other possibilities too.
Okay, where's diff apply? Okay, so if I want to turn a mouse into a human, for example, here, I would take the diff results.
Well, you can turn a human into a mouse.
So you can see actually it's what is it, the third line down, the identity there. So
line down.
Diff apply of diff of old comma new
comma old,
okay, returns new.
Fine. Okay.
So
So-
it's
so now-
important. It's important to understand that identity, but that's not the most interesting use of diff apply. The most interesting use of diff apply is to apply the diff object to something which is, say old prime, where the prime is, it got modified in some other way. And
Yes.
then you want to kind of, pull the thing, stitch the things together.
And what happens if you want to edit the diffs, so to speak, or does that not make sense?
It does make sense. And that's not something we've fully baked yet. It is absolutely possible that you could end up with merge conflicts. And that's that's two of the failure modes actually right now. And we're, I think that's one of the highest priority things that we want to resolve, but that's not there today though.
Okay, so if I change this 6.5 and I get rid of the 9 and I add an 11. Okay, I've got some diff here. Beautiful. Okay, now I want to take.
Now, okay, so take your old.
I'm going to
Yeah.
change old. I'm going to say diff apply.
Diff apply of %116, comma.
And then I want to make a changed old.
Oh, right now it's a second argument. Does diff apply work that way, Lou?
No, the second
Okay,
argument
should.
only for you.
Yeah, you're right. It probably should. But yeah, change like,
No, I just changed that.
Yeah. Now, see, that works fine because there was no conflict.
I get it. So now, boy.
But
do
if you
guys
change
realize
like
you
the
guys, oops, what the hell did I just do there? You guys, this is so deeply physics project-y. You have no idea.
good.
This is the story of this is all about causal invariance, confluent rewrite systems, all these kinds of jolly things.
But change like the 5, 1, 1, 3, 4, 5, change the 5 to something else, and now it'll go awry. Oh, should it?
Well, what does it do when there's a merge conflict?
Lou, should that have worked? That doesn't.
Well, diff applied for two-way diffs just does index replacement in sort of a stupid way.
Well, hold on, shouldn't it complain if it's being asked to do something where it's not clear what to do?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. I was starting to verge on the edge of this problem when I was playing with it last week, and I didn't. Yeah. Yes, I agree. I think it should have done a better job in this case. And this is going to go even worse. Yes.
What did that just do?
It did index-based replacements.
What does that mean? You mean it looked at its list of where things are in the two? I'm confused.
Okay, so Stephen, here's watch the failure mode. Same thing, but just with the first 4 elements. Delete all the other elements in the list. This will maybe give you an idea of
Splaffaroo.
Yeah, and this is a conversation that Lou and I already had. So yes, basically it should do. It should better confirmation.
Okay, hold on. What should it do? Should it generate something where there's failure in the output? That doesn't seem like an obviously stupid thing to do.
In this case, yes. That
Failure,
was where John
a
and I
single failure
landed.
object as the output, or the stuff it can do and then failure embedded in it?
I am inclined to think it should be a single failure object with detailed information about the nature of the conflict.
Yeah, I agree.
And if there's more than one conflict, then you should be able to see them all. maybe it might be limited, size limited in some way. I mean, if there's 1,000 conflicts, we don't need to see all 1,000. But
right.
if
But I mean, your basic point is, if it doesn't work, if there's a merge conflict, it just says, failure. That's the output. So in the previous cases, if there are overlapping changes,
Mhm.
then it just fails.
Yeah.
I mean, what I would want, or at least have the option to have, is something where it applies what it can and just ignores the rest.
Well, how can it ignore it? What does it do? It leaves them in the form
It just doesn't apply that piece of the diff. Right.
So, Stephen, when we were looking at the details, remember the left-hand sides of the rules were the positions in the strings or the positions in the
Yes.
lists. If those positions don't exist, then yes, that particular hunk could just be skipped. If either the original position or the target position don't
see.
exist.
And what I'm suggesting is that it would be a little more sensitive to that, not only detecting position, but detecting a context window. That within the context window, it actually matches what it
So
expects
we need
to
something like a merge conflict action option. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
That's certainly what I'm arguing for.
Right. Okay. All right. So, okay, fair enough. All right, let's keep going here. So that's diff apply. Now, what does diff apply have? I haven't looked at.
So you might be interested to know, by the way, that git merge, that part of git link has this notion of conflict functions. And the conflict functions are a bit more nuanced because it's detecting, we're dealing with a particular file type, because of course Git might be dealing with a bunch of file types. And in the case of this particular file type, then look at doing merges in a particular way.
I see.
And we actually do that so that we can do like notebook files can be merged in using our notebook merger for example.
But so you've already got some failure conditions there listed under diff apply here.
Yes.
Those are aspirational. Yes.
Yeah, they're not implemented yet, but this
Okay.
was
Right,
I was just writing this up last week.
Okay. All right. Let's look at diff 3. Do we have examples? Let's take a look at diff 3 here. Okay, well, so naively, let me just go ahead and do this. I'm just going to say range of 10, comma. Okay, let me start messing around with this. It's very wide. Wait a minute, who's the they and the I and the you and the them? I don't know. It doesn't seem right to me.
This is the standard nomenclature for.
So the first one is
diffs.
the first one is the common, right? The first I believe it's in the order that you're providing them, right?
Yes.
And right, so the common ancestor is the first argument, quote unquote, whatever our version goes in the second slot, and what other people did. Right, so for example, in a Git example, right, if you have your local version and somebody pushed a change to the server, then you want to, right, then there's obviously their version and then our version and whatever was the common ancestor of those.
So, question: has graphic design had a look at any of these interfaces?
They've commented on colors, but not much else.
I don't like the fact that it's so loud. Common ancestor, our changes, their changes, because it's kind of a weird, I mean, we could just bring it down. Maybe
And I think
Noah has
Billy,
comments on
we
that.
have Billy here.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So I mean, I don't know what you want to do to bring it down, but just make it, something you can see, and you can see it's clearly different than the data. But and why are these columns so wide?
Well, I mean, they only look wide because you have 1-digit elements in them. Imagine that you were diffing text, lines of text. Then they would probably be too narrow.
Right.
I mean, this is a frequent problem with three-way diffs, though, is that usually in order for them to be useful, like you're maximizing your window to the entire monitor.
Yes, I've seen that. Explain this to me. How does the array plot work?
So reading left to right, row 1 is, first element, second element, third element. And then the next row is fourth element, fifth element. Gray means no change.
Okay, so we
Green-
wrapped it around with scan
Yes.
lines, basically.
Yes. And I chose a dimension for the plot that seemed sensible for the number of elements.
And
might
but is there
help.
any indication of ours versus theirs here?
No.
Okay.
Which will be good to do, I think. But, another thing that might help is by putting a scale on this side, given that you do have a scale of, positions, right? You could indicate that this is going up by strides of 3, so to speak. Do you get what I'm saying?
So you want some sort of axes.
I want something, some numbers here that indicate that this is, 1 through 3. I don't know exactly how to do it. Maybe there's a 3 there, maybe there's a 6 there, 9 there, something like that. Okay, to indicate that this is.
So my hope was to have an iconic view of the diff that didn't need explanation. I think if we get to the point where we need explanation, we may have missed the mark.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I'd like to see can I see my?
Right, and if
let me bring my
right,
mouse
and for a large diff, right, there will be no room for numbers there, right?
But I do feel like, I mean, the fact that there are no grid lines or axes or anything, it can feel like it can be a bit. It might be a bit difficult to even know what the size of a unit square is.
Okay, so look at this puppy.
Right. So imagine that as sort of the icon in a summary box. That's sort of what I was aiming at.
Here? Blue is an edit.
Correct.
So is that standard? Green, blue, red?
Well,
I think green and red are standard.
Yeah, blue. I think this blue came from design. I don't remember for sure, but there isn't really a standard change color. Also another thing that we've thought about is dealing with people who are colorblind, and there are programs out there that have colorblind schema, but I don't know if the choices for colorblind folks are very standardized either.
Okay. Why is there extra space at the bottom there? Bug.
Buglet, yes.
Must be, okay. Yeah.
All right. So this looks pretty reasonable to me, but I don't understand why. Oh, I see there. All right, fine. It's a certain aspect ratio that you've picked. That isn't an aspect ratio based on the width.
I mean,
I
it's
I guess
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
it's just one big long string, so there isn't.
But this is
the-
quite
you know,
nice. I mean, this is useful to me.
I agree.
It would be really nice if there was some indication that it's working as opposed to just sitting there dead as a stone.
I agree.
Okay, and that's a very big alignment chart that's not very happy with. Okay.
I mean, I can describe what alignment chart's trying to do.
Oh, I know what it's trying to do. It's
Okay.
sensible.
All right.
What about a three-way alignment chart?
I wonder if in this sort of case, instead of showing every single alignment, we want to, you know, do every nth alignment when it starts to get like this.
Yes. Okay. I agree. Okay, so let's just look on here. Okay, so I think I'm getting the picture here. It's how does this relate? You know, like we've had this notebook history stuff, right? When we come to notebook diffs, we have a bunch of things in notebook history where it's kind of nice because you can click on something and you go back to that place in the notebook. Do we have anything like that here?
In the report view, yes. If it now keep in mind, you know, this presumes a notebook that is, you know, that is either openable or already open. If you have a notebook expression,
Yeah, I understand.
then
That's
it's
hopeless.
not necessarily been instantiated anywhere.
Okay. All right. So I mean, a workflow would be generate the diff report. Then I'm going to go modify my notebook to either apply those diffs or whatever else. I mean, is there any possibility of it? Is that sensible? I mean, in other words, I want to see what changes I've made. I'm trying to align some of my changes to some changes.
Well, so as a for example, you know, what our DQA team will want to do is they'll want to see a review of all the diffs since the last time they looked at a notebook, and if you know there's something that's kind of non-obvious that needs further review, then they'll want to go to that section so they can review it fully in context.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, these things, sorry, remind me, Lou, these things are basically hyperlinks, right? The cell content changes.
Ooh, I'm not sure exactly which ones you're.
Sorry, in the report, there's
The chevron at the end of. Are you talking about the file names at the top?
no, I'm talking about individual changes, individual cells. Okay, so yeah, the it could be clear, but in at the top there where it says text cell changed, and there's a chevron, which maybe we need to make, maybe that needs to be a bigger story.
Well, it's also not.
Well, the notebooks hadn't been open, so it needed to open the notebooks first.
Yeah, but then it's
yeah.
completely unclear where this selection is.
Yeah, you know,
Cell changed. What does that mean?
oh, that's it's trying to make it clear for you. Also, something that would help for percent modernization, Jason Harris added a self-flashing mechanism, and maybe we might want to use that here as well.
Sounds good to me.
As long as it's not too visually disruptive.
So long as it's not too flashy, he's trying to say.
Well, the interesting thing about it is that, like, if you miss the flash, you could click it again and it'll flash again.
I see. Okay, there's some questions here from live stream. Sandra asks, what about sparse array? What does it do?
Nothing at the moment.
Diffing between a sparse array. I mean, that's like diffing between a file and, I mean, diffing between different, you know, that's kind of the the mathematically aware diff, which I think is a more complicated thing. This is very
Yeah,
much a
and,
structural
and
diff.
this is why I put some thought into how to organize a documentation, and this is why I started the documentation up front by structuring it around what is it you can diff, because we can't diff everything.
Yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and some diffing is, can you diff different representations of the same algebraic expression? By same, I mean same in value. It's very complicated. So there's going to be, I think syntactic diffing is the only thing we can expect. And then the question is, how broad can the syntax go? And does a sparse array, is it equivalent to an array or not?
Well, and also I didn't, frankly, I didn't think about this. Well, so the and this is something I didn't really drill down into, but there is a third argument format which I did not properly make sure was, I didn't put a table for that in, but yeah, I mean, for two given things, especially in a world where we're supporting more types, one can easily imagine that the types are going to be different, or sorry, that you might want to take two expressions and get two different kinds of diffs out of them or more.
Yeah, that's complicated.
It's certainly already the case for strings, because for strings it is already the case that when you're diffing two strings, you might want to get a character diff, a word diff, or a line diff.
Yeah. Okay. Ethan asks here, can you diff files on metadata? That seems useful. Like diffing GIFs on EXIF data, for example.
Yeah. So right now we don't have any understanding of beyond the the formats that I outlined.
That's a thing for the future, and that needs to be with the
but that having
team.
been said, there is already kind of a peek at what metadata diffing might look like in the diffing of cells in notebooks, where
Yes.
a cell or a note or cells in a notebook might only be different by option settings and not by content.
Indeed. All right, let's just look at this notebook changes. I'm not a fan so far. I think this needs to be much more graphically. Okay, so let's look at this case here. Look, if it's old and new, for goodness sake, say old and new, not first and second.
Sure.
See what
Sure.
I'm saying?
Yes.
I think this should be a little bit more designed. This should not be. And notebook changes doesn't have to be. I mean, that's kind of a header, but it's a notebook change thing. You don't need to say big blaring title notebook changes.
Well, if you save it and then open it some later point, then you might not know that.
All right, fair enough.
Well,
this looks like I might have
I mean, actually, I think we do need some kind of announcement, because you're potentially, especially if you start clicking on things, you're going to have 3 windows on the screen at a time.
Fine. I would like to see something more stylized here, rather than something that looks like a title.
That's fine.
Heading.
That's fine. We've not put as much effort into the design of this as we could have, and I agree we should.
So old versus new.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's a notebook expression, it needs to be some graphical thing that indicates that, not something with textual angle brackets that looks like it came from 1988. What is that summary?
Well, I mean, it could be nothing more than an iconize of
I think
what an iconize of notebook expression would look like.
Yeah, that'd be beautiful.
It might even be, I don't know, we might even, if it's going to be iconized, we might even put the actual thing in there so people could copy and paste it later.
Well, that would be even more lovely.
Yeah.
And why don't you just say old and new? And why don't we call this notebook diff report?
In the documentation, I refer to original and new, but we can go. I'm. There's nothing here that I'm.
Well, let's decide what it is with 3-way diffs as well. I mean, if it's original, go ahead.
Users aren't prohibited from diffing in the other order. Notebook files, their age is irrelevant.
Okay, but good point. Well,
In fact, sometimes people actually, even if there are things that haven't aged, people might choose to diff in the opposite
yeah,
order
okay, all right,
because
okay. So what would
yeah.
you like to call the two things?
Yeah, well, and you saw what I used for diff3, which kind of faced this problem as well.
I see it right there. Common ancestor, our changes, their changes.
Well, and in the usage, I referred to it as ancestor edit 1 and edit 2. But yeah, we can.
Well, version 1, version 2, or something. Version that has an ordering again.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly flip it to ours and theirs. I don't have a problem with that.
Ah, I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. That's incomprehensible. I mean, I'm not sure that old and new gives a temporal sequence. I mean, you can diff. I see what you're saying. Original and changed. No, but you might just want to diff two things that are both on unequal. I mean, like the two
Okay,
mitochondria.
in the diff usage message, I referred to them as original and new.
Okay, but look, the mouse versus the human mitochondrion.
Yeah,
Which one's original? Which one's new? Which came first,
Yeah.
the mouse or the human? You know, I don't know. I don't actually know historically.
I think probably the mouse, but I
That's
could
what
be
I'm
wrong.
guessing too. But humans go back longer. I mean, depending on the strain. Okay. Okay. I mean, this thing, by the way, the heading absolutely should be notebook diff report, surely, because that's what you asked for was the report.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Okay. So now, why not say instead of other changes, metadata changes? Metadata and option changes or something? Just to be clear what the heck it is, otherwise you'd just be completely confused.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
And then content changes. I think you don't need to say notebook content.
Yeah.
And then, those should be, I would say, much more, like they could be boxed or something like that. I'd be perfectly happy to see box going down there to indicate these with some button in the box, basically, that goes to, that does the hyperlink opening thing.
If you're pointing at things, my Zoom is not
I'm
updating.
not. No, I'm not.
Okay,
I meant
okay.
these. I meant these here.
Okay.
I think this just needs a little bit of a design effort. And then I really want to understand the workflow of how I use these. So you're saying DQA, for example, would use them by just saying, what changed, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, in DQA's case, they're not going to be doing any diff apply sort of thing. What they're going to be doing is just using it as a farm of hyperlinks for them to go look at the changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's super useful, basically.
Yeah.
I have no idea what they're doing right now, but this is obviously super useful. All right, what else do we have to cover? As we're a bit over time here. What else do we have to cover right now?
I mean, I think the main thing is we could go a bit through the options of diff if you wanted to and see how sensible or insensible you think they are. But if you want to postpone that to another time, we could schedule a follow-up as well.
I think we're going to need a follow-up for some of these design things, but let's just take a quick look at the diff options. Where did I put them? Here. Okay, I think we should call it the diff display. The overall size of the diff just seems crazy.
By the way, it's interesting that they're kind of these options fit into two broad categories. One broad category
Yeah.
is how to display the diff, and the other broad category is how to do the diff.
Sure, I agree. But I think you should be clear in the description.
Should we have two separate tables for that? Is there?
Yes, there are precedents for that.
There is. Good.
Yep.
Good. Then I'll do that.
Okay, but I think you should say the diff display when you're talking about
Okay.
a list of data types that should be ignored in doing the diff, presumably.
Yes. When calculating the diff.
Right. So aligned cell lists. I'm unclear what that is.
Okay, so aligned cell list is only relevant for doing notebooks. That's another kind of weirdness. Is some options they're not relevant for many of the cases. But if you're doing notebooks, the question is, how do you figure out kind of how the cells line up when the cells might be different from one another?
Yep.
There are two useful options and one kind of useless option. At least I think it's useless. The two useful options, one is to use expression UUIDs.
Okay.
And so just looking for where they're matching up.
I understand.
The second is to use heuristics based on edit distance to determine similarity.
I get it.
And then the useless option is to just do an index count from of the number of cells.
It's super confusing that alignment has to do with where things are positioned on the page, and aligned cell lists has to do with kind of
well, and so breaking it up into two tables will help that.
Yeah, I understand, but I think this name aligned cell list is too weird, and I think
should it be a method option? Can we relegate it to that level of
no, I don't think so particularly. Okay. I mean, I think it's going to be something people care whether it's UUIDs or not. I could call it something like
UUIDs will definitely be the preferred case for people working in Git, but there will be cases where people will find it just gets in the way.
It's very charming. It's very physics projecty. You can either have two hypergraphs that have been, have different origins but happen to be isomorphic, be merged, or you can insist on having lineage.
Okay, so one of the big cases, just to give you some context, where you would want to line cells as line cell lists not to use expression UIDs is for notebooks that are generated.
Yes. Yes, you have two generated notebooks, they got different UUIDs.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think this should be something like diff. It should have a name that makes it clear something like diff alignment method or something.
That's not terrible. I wouldn't be totally ashamed of that.
Okay. Base style specifications for the diff. Is that display base styles?
No. Sorry, Lou, you remember this better than I do. Can you explain this?
So it's a way to specify the display. If you don't like green, you want to use your own green.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not standard notebook options, which is why we didn't just call it base style.
I understand, but I mean diff display style, and how does that relate to appearance? Why don't you just have one option and just
okay, so appearance is, well, yes, it could be subkeys in appearance. Yes, we could do that. Appearance is right now is basically just, is that drop-down selector.
Is which one it is.
Yes.
Right, the named view.
But
named
we could
display.
But we do have precedence for having appearance being able to specify kind of multiple vectors of appearance.
Yeah.
And
well,
yes,
appearance
we could do
elements
this.
is yet another thing. I think this is going to need another meeting. I need to go to something else here.
Okay.
So, All right.
But we've already got a decent amount of changes that we can work on and bring to the next meeting. So that's good.
Sounds good. And bring some more examples next time.
Okay.
Sounds good. See you guys
Thank you.
soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Right.
Bye.